Hello, and welcome to episode 125 of RickCast, coming to you from beautiful Central Texas, where we are officially in sit and sweat season, where we kind of just hang out and try not to die. No, not die, obviously, but sitting from our perch here in Central Texas, observing all the things that we would like to speak about in today's during the day. So let's see here. It's June 10th, 2025. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Tuesday, so not everybody's favorite day, not yet Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, but it's not Monday. So at least you got that going for you. We got some stuff to talk about tonight. We were talking about the gentleman Neville Singham, because we'll talk a little bit about the riots. We'll talk about the protest riots, spicy season, whatever you want to call them. We'll talk about them for a bit, and we will, mention a little bit of what's happening, because everybody else is. And listen, what's happening is there's more riots taking place in LA. Now there are some that are starting to spread out. There was some in Austin last night. And we'll talk about this No Kings protest that is being set up for next week as the escalations continue, as we know they were going to continue. But let's at least identify the guy behind it with this Neville Singham type of gentleman. Then we'll talk about the No Kings protest, what to do, how to be prepared, stay away from those areas if you get stuck in those areas, and so forth. Because they did this during 2020. This is all callbacks, right? Evil isn't creative. Evil just repeats what's successful. And so keep that in mind when we're starting to see 2024, 2025 unfold the same way that 2020 unfolded. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll get into a couple of other things. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, usually a pretty solid representative, usually right on the money. But apparently he's got to scratch that liberal itch, like we all do, I guess, from time to time. And he's going to now want to make $15 an hour for minimum wage for federal employees. The idea of minimum wage is not a long-term wage. It is not supposed to be a long-term wage, so it should not be a high-paying job. But I guess every once in a while, Republicans have to remind us why we are the terrible party and why we lose, and why Republicans are terrible politicians, because they don't want us to get too hopeful or too optimistic most of the time. And then after that, we'll finish the show up with this story coming out of Bleeding Fool about WB, Warner Brothers Discovery, is not doing well. David Zaslav was brought in a couple years ago to try and clean the whole thing up, and it's not going too well. Everything's riding on Superman, which is coming out July 11th, or it goes Jurassic World, Superman, Fantastic Four. And so there's a lot riding on the Superman, but they're starting to split the company off, because I believe, the way I'm reading it, that they're setting it up for sales. That the initial reason why Discovery bought Warner Brothers and Discovery bought Warner Brothers was to essentially flip it. They were going to buy it, clean house, make it more efficient, right? Make Warner Brothers profitable or great again, so to speak, and then spin it off onto somebody else. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, no, Mark, there's a lot of, everybody's already written off Fantastic Four. We've looked at it. We've written off Fantastic Four, but there are some people that are still hoping and still saying that the test screenings are good for Superman, and it's a lot more positive, and it's a lot more colorful, and it's a lot more this and a lot more that. So there is hope around Superman. The crazy thing is, the way it's going to work is, ironically enough, the order in which they are released is the order in which they will win. I mean, win the month of July. Jurassic World will make $1 billion, probably 1.1 billion. Superman, they're hoping, this is how far expectations have gone for superhero films. and just the movie theater industry in general. If Superman makes, if it tops out at like 850, that's a win. When it used to be that it was a billion or bust, but now they're thinking 850 is like a win for a Superman film. And most people are, I'm kind of in line with most other people. I think Fantastic Four makes between 330 million and 450 million worldwide, which is an absolute disaster for that film. That would be the third flop in a row, and then they don't have anything until December of next year. So I agree. I did actually one of my most popular videos on RickCast reviews is talking about Superman getting rid of the American way. And I had a lot of people with a lot of thoughts on that, and I appreciate everybody that was contributed to that. But yeah, that's James Gunn's type of deal, and they don't know their audience. They don't know their audience at all, which is why they're in this situation that they're in, because they refuse to give the audience what they want. They really do. They still think they're in the power position, even though streaming and the writer's strike and the coming of AI has completely destroyed any leverage that they would technically have. It's gone. So outside of that, it's really not a great day for Hollywood. But then again, the entire industry is set for a shakeup. It needs to be, because it's been living off the superhero genre for probably 15 years, with no creativity, no reinvestments, bigger budgets, until they figure out their budget issue, which means they got to get all their budgets back down to around 100 million. Right now, there are people saying Superman may cost 450 to make. We already know Fantastic Four is going to be up there. Mission Impossible just cost somewhere in that range as well. So it is what it is. That's a good point. That's a good point you're making, Mark. They know they produce what they know, if you would to say that. But yes, it is interesting so far. All of those things. So let's get into it. We have two hot takes or two stories to warm up. A couple opening acts. If any other bar rats are gonna filter in tonight, I got some good. For June, we got some good traffic all over the place. We got some good traffic on Rumble and on Getter and on Instagram and on Kick and on X and on you and my one guy on Twitch. Salute to you, my one person on Twitch. So thank you for hanging out. All right, let's get to our first hot take here of the day. And it is it's a good one. It's a good one. It's Donnie T, DJT, President Trump, for those of you who were wondering. He was at Fort Bragg today. And here's what he had to say. This is the one that made the most headlines during his speech today.
We are also going to be restoring the names to Fort Pickett, Fort Hood, Fort Gordon, Fort Rucker, Fort Polk, Fort A.P. Hill, and Fort Robert E. Lee. We won a lot of battles out of those forts. It's no time to change. And I'm superstitious. I like to keep it going, right? I'm very superstitious. We want to keep it going. So that's a big story. We just announced that today to you for the first time. They said, why didn't you wait till Saturday? I said, I can't wait. I got to talk to my friends here today. This is a record crowd. You never had a crowd this big. That's an honor. You think this crowd would have showed up for Biden? I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong.
They would have shown up, but they wouldn't have been as enthusiastic as they are with Trump. I agree with Mark. Tradition means something. As somebody that has worked near Fort Hood, Cavazo Hood, nobody ever really transitioned to calling it Cavazos. We used to just call it the Fort or Fort Hood. We would always just call it that. And it's really a shame that that these everything being politicized during the Summer of Love and the ripping down of history and rewriting it at least is being undone a little bit. At least it's being undone a little bit. And that's very important. One thing that people wanted with Trump was to stop this progression that was taking place by the left, by leftists, whatever you want to call them, progressives, Marxists, communists. There's like 700 different names for these people. And the fact of the matter is, taking the those names and then reestablishing them is something that is very important. Now, the next thing you need to do is put up as many statues as you can, or if Trump was really, if he knew he was going to be there, or if he knew JD Vance was going to be there in 2028, recommission statues of like Robert E. Lee and others and put them back up, at least in like Washington D.C. You can't do anything about ones in like New York or Seattle. If they take those down, they take those down on city property. But as far as any federal buildings, yeah, sure, they should absolutely re-erect, for lack of a better term, the statues, because that is part of this history. I was in San Antonio a couple weeks ago. I told you all that while I did a show from there. And the Alamo, which I went to, by the way, as a history person, I know I may lose some points on my Texas card. Wasn't super impressed with the Alamo. I wish Brian was here so he could at least back me up on this. But the Alamo's nice. You go, you stand there, you're like, wow, this is really tiny. And it's the thing about the Alamo is the history around it's a pretty sweet setup, and it absolutely honors what happened there. So, but I didn't want to pay to go through like the whole thing because I just didn't feel like it. But it's important for every country, that and what I'm trying to say is it's important for countries to remember its history. I know Rage Against the Machine is a bunch of sellouts now. I absolutely agree with you, but I grew up listening to them. Maybe you did too. And then there was the song, the lyric in the song, Testify. I think it was Testify. It might be Testify, but he who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the future controls the past. He who controls the present controls the future. He who controls the future controls the past. It all adds up. It all adds up in that point, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it that way. That, listen, if you do the best you can to erase history and then replay it, and that's why they put those. We talked about the ugly, the Slay Queen in Central, not Central, in Times Square, the ugly statues that are going up that have replaced the other ones. And the reason they do that is because it's not now. And I think a lot of people lose that in the short game. Oh, they're tearing our history down. Yeah, it's not for you and me. We remember it. They're tearing it down for people in 20 years. Babies that are being born now, they're erecting statues for them. Meaning when they come of age and they come around, they'll take that history in unquestioned because that's what's being sold to them. So it is interesting that the history of this union is being decided with things like names of forts, statues, holidays, all of these things that the progressives want to erase and make permanent changes to. You have to fight for them if you're really interested in seeing the future of the union survive. So it is interesting and good on. That's a good Trump, right? We do good Trump, bad Trump here. That's a good Trump, restoring the names, because they should be restored to the glory that they had before. All right, RickCast, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. Second story of the night, a little follow-up to the previous Monday story, which was yesterday. So Simone Biles destroyed her entire reputation over a weekend, right? She destroyed her entire reputation over a weekend by trying to wade into the Troon talk and going after Riley Gaines. I don't care. I'm not a Riley Gaines supporter. She's fine, whatever. But you can't be it's weird when you are one of the supposed she's very talented. She's a quitter, but she's very talented, Simone Biles. She's very talented, but she's a quitter. That's Simone. She's a quitter. She's a quitter, but you can't wade into the conversation about women in men's sports and then come on the side of men. You can't, especially when you're like 4'8", right? When you are a not a very tall person, and this is not me throwing shade at her, it just looks weird when she should be the one that is defending women in women's sports the most, because if troons were allowed, then she wouldn't have a quarter of a shot to be even to get a chance. And so it's interesting that now she's walking. It didn't take long. Took a day of getting dragged on X. So Simone Biles apologizes for attacking Riley Gaines over objections to troons in women's sports. Olympic athletes and quitter Simone Biles has issued an apology to former collegiate swimmer Riley Gaines after attacking her for opposing troons in competing in women's sports. Biles went after her. We already know that. Blah 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 blah. So okay, do we have the whole thing? Here we go. I wanted to follow up from my last tweet, and of course, because X now allows you to write Facebook-like paragraphs, we have to deal with this. But she says, I want to follow up from my last tweets. I've always believed competitive equality and inclusivity are both essential in sports. Current system doesn't adequately balance these important principles. What principles? I don't know what you're talking about, which often lead to frustration and heated exchanges. And it didn't help for me to get personal with Riley, which I apologize for. These are sensitive, complicated issues that I truly don't have the answers and solutions to. Well, I do. Don't let men in women's sports. There you go. That's what you should ask a man. Boom. I figured it out for you. It may be emotionally trying and difficult, but let me make it easier. Don't let men compete in women's sports. As long as you do that, you're going to be fine. You're welcome, Simone. I'll send you a bill. But I believe it starts with empathy and respect. And that's the problem. Hold on. Before I get to this statement, we got to get the misogyny alert out there. That's the problem with letting women in to make policy, because they base everything on empathy and respect. Oh, well, this person feels like a woman, so we should respect that decision and let them do it. Where a man goes, that guy's 6'4" and you're 4'8", and he's going to destroy you in the jumping, swinging competition. I don't follow gymnastics. So no, the 6'4" guy does not get to compete. It's that simple. Doesn't happen. I was not advocating for policies that compromise fairness in women's sports. Yes, you were. My objection is to be singling out children for public scrutiny in ways that feel personal and harmful. Well, they did that that's their parents' fault. That's not your fault. That's not your job to regulate. That's the parents who need to be shamed into that. Individual athletes, especially kids, should never be the focus of criticism of a flawed system they have no control over. Once again, that's the parents' fault. Parents need to be shamed. I believe sports organizations have a responsibility to come up with rules supporting inclusion. I don't. While maintaining fair competition. There is no fair competition if you do inclusion. It's that simple. So, she's going to start walking it back. But, I mean, imagine just absolutely igniting your brand on fire. For what? For dudes? Ridiculous. Brian, I'm glad you're here. I made somewhat of an inflammatory statement earlier. Hopefully you can back me up. Hopefully you will. That I visited the Alamo when I was in San Antonio, and I was less than impressed when I was there. I thought the entire plaza was nice, but when you actually stand in front of the Alamo, you're like, okay. And then I didn't pay to do the tour or any of the other kinds of things that I did. So hopefully, Brian, you'll back me up in the chat, or you'll excoriate me. Either way, we ought to have a good time. The crazy thing is, Catholics, there's a big plaque on one of the sides of the walls of the Alamo that talks about all the Freemasons that participated in the Battle of the Alamo, which was Crockett, Barrett, William Terrence Barrett, pretty much Santa Anna, all of them competed. All of them fought in the Alamo. All of them were Freemasons. Although, ironically enough, at the cathedral. I forget the name of the cathedral. They have the bone. They dug up the bones of like William Barrett Travis and some of the other guys. And it's in the champ. Yeah, no, the Alamo was it was a church. Yeah, it used to be a church. It's a Catholic church. San Fernando Cathedral. Thank you. See, Brian's at San Fernando Cathedral, they actually have like this weird, you walk in on the left side and it's just a little container and it says, "Here lies the bones of the Alamo fighters, William." I'm like, but they were Freemasons. So how the Freemasons are there? Yeah, the Alamo heroes are buried there. I don't think it's an oxymoron. I'm not even questioning it. Cool, whatever. Do whatever you got to do. I just thought that was a little strange. That's all. A little weird. But yeah, I have pictures of them and everything. But San Fernando is a gorgeous cathedral. It is a gorgeous cathedral. And if you're ever in San Antonio, I know if you had the choice between going to San Fernando, the Cathedral of San Fernando, or the Alamo, I would recommend San Fernando Cathedral. 100% I would recommend that over the Alamo. Especially as a Catholic, even though the Alamo was a Catholic church and it was a mission and all these other kinds of things. I know. I mean, I'm from Texas. If Texans actually find out me saying this stuff, they may run me out of the state. But I'm sorry, I just can't. It was nice, and I was talking about the fact that it was preserving history, and I appreciate the fact that such care and reverence is dedicated to the area and what happened there. I think it's more important what happened there than anything else. So, anyway, over explaining, but it is what it is. Back to Simone Biles. Well, yeah, Olivia Doon. I don't even think she's at LSU anymore. She's dating she's like married to some major league pitcher or whatever. But it is what it is. Is that true? Is that true? At St. Because he flashed the Freemason sign to Sam Houston. I would believe you. I absolutely believe you. You would know more than I would. But yeah, if you're a Catholic, you know that Freemasons are not like, great. Anyway, before I get too far into it, let's talk about the unofficial official sponsor of this show, and that is tradflags.com. I use their image in the warm up or the countdown to the show. That is the flag of the Sacred Heart of Jesus that they have at tradflag.com. And since I'm borrowing their image, I suggest that you go to tradflag.com and purchase one of their flags. I get nothing out of it, but maybe they'll leave me alone and let me continue to use the image if I promote their product. Get it at tradflag.com, tradflag.com. They also have the Quebec Sacred Heart, Sacre-Cœur, Carillon Sacre-Cœur flag as well. So check that out, tradflag.com, tradflag.com. And I don't know if it helps, but it is what it is. So the San Jacinto Monument, it is because it's just like it's kind of like the Lincoln, it's like the Washington Monument, isn't it? And it's in such a weird area because it's all like oil and gas fields. And then there's this giant, what do they call them? I don't know. The pointy things. Anyway, yeah, but you come to this show for hard hitting facts, and I just don't have any of them, but, they're not a cult. There's a specific name for the actual structure because they're all over Rome too. And you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so let's get to our first official story of the day because I'm kind of blabbering like an idiot and I don't think that's very impressive. So let's get to our first story. Now, this is kind of two stories in one. We're going to talk a little bit about the riots, the spicy season protests, but then we're going to get into obelisk. Thank you. It's a giant obelisk. Yeah, like 15 people are going to tell me it's an obelisk now. I'd rather 15 people tell me than nobody. Yes, it's a giant obelisk. And you're driving on the highway and you look over and it's all like oil and gas tankers and then a giant obelisk like sticking out of nowhere. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Anyway, we're going to talk about the spicy season protests, and we're also going to talk about Neville Singham. Neville Singham is the gentleman who's been identified as the person behind that. Now, As of today, there's been footage all over the place that 2,000 additional National Guard members have been sent to Los Angeles. A judge just ruled because I believe Newman was not Newscomb, right? Gavin Newscomb. He sued to have the National Guard stopped, and the judge, we'll talk about it on Thursday. We're not going to stop that. So that's continuing. On Monday, Trump approved sending 2,000 more National Guard troops along with approximately 700 Marines to Los Angeles to assist with managing protests related to immigration. The deployment followed several days of protests. We call them riots here at RickCast because we like to identify correctly what they are. By federal immigration raid, sparked by immigration raids. They arrested 40 people with the Guard placed under federal control without Governor Newsom's consent. The deployment forces consist of about 2,100 National Guard personnel assigned to Task Force 51 and 700 active duty Marines. Now, people will say posse comitatus. You can't have posse comitatus because you can't have law enforcement or military assist with law enforcement. Now, what's going on here is that the Marines are being sent in to protect the ICE agents who were left defenseless when they started these raids over the weekend. You saw the videos of buses being surrounded and all these other kinds of things. And then you saw additional video of the LAPD kind of just standing around, not doing anything because the mayor, Karen Bass, decided that she was going to act like a mayor instead of go to Africa every time there's a problem. Like the last time when fire swept through the entire place. By the way, that hasn't even started to be picked up, but we're going to burn down the rest of Los Angeles. She told the police to stand down. So the federal agents were left defenseless. They were overwhelmed because they were pretty much surrounded. And so the National Guard and the Marines are being used to protect the actual ICE agents. And ironically enough, the rooftop Koreans, they're active on X. At least one of them is. He's like, our Koreatown's safe. Nobody comes into Koreatown to protest. We're ready to go. They're not gonna extend outside of Koreatown. They're gonna take care of what they need to take care of. So you have these troops being there, and the way they're getting around posse comitatus is they're not actually doing law enforcement. They are protecting those who are doing the law enforcement. So it's a neat way, or it's an interesting way they got around it. Governor Gavin Newsom condemned the deployment as reckless and affront to the troops, even though Gavin Newsom cheered on the troops that were being sent back in 2020 to protect Joe Biden and the inauguration. We all remember that when they didn't have National Guard troops on the Feast of the Epiphany, but then when Joe Biden got sworn in, they had more troops than they know what to do with. So it's always with the left. It's always with their policies, don't do it one way, do it another way, yada, yada, yada. If they didn't contradict their principles, they wouldn't have any principles at all. And so he's going to say, of course, this is awful and so forth. And it's catering to the president's ego, while California Attorney General Rob Bonta initiated legal action, which a judge said, we'll talk about it on Thursday, claiming the federal government overstepped constitutional boundaries and violated the 10th Amendment, which is fantastic that they're talking about the 10th Amendment. It's funny how the 10th Amendment comes around only when Democrats need to use it. Republicans never use the 10th Amendment secretly because Republicans are addicted. They're absolutely addicted to the federal government. They love the idea of a strongman. Republicans always like the idea of a strongman. The idea that they stand up for conservative values is nonsense and absolutely ridiculous. It's only great because it fits on the back of a bumper sticker. But if Republicans had their way, they would have a strongman. They would have a king tomorrow. And that would be exactly what they would want. But Democrats, hey, they discovered the Second Amendment. They discovered the 10th Amendment. All the amendments come back when Democrats need them. When Republicans need them, yeah, they don't exist. Don't worry about it. They're not a thing. But now we actually do need them. So it is what it is in that regard. The expanded federal force brought total active duty personnel to 4,100, intensifying tensions with ongoing protests in multiple areas and concerns about coordination among law enforcement agencies. I'm sure they'll figure it out. I'm sure they'll figure it out because I already said last night, because I still think Monday was a couple days away, even though it was only yesterday, that if you really wanted to take over, if you wanted to free Los Angeles, you'd have to occupy it with about 10,000 men. I'm talking like straight occupation with martial law and all these other kinds of things, which I know people like my buddy, Steve Cunningham, his head would pop off if he heard me say that. I'm just speaking from a practical standpoint. If you really wanted to free Los Angeles to deport, probably half of the population is illegal in Los Angeles. Let's be completely honest. Let's say half of the population in Los Angeles is it has some kind of murky immigration status. In order to deport all of them, you're going to need about 10,000 troops and martial law. Because that's what we've gotten to. This is the point where we've gotten to as far as with letting all of these policies take place all the way back to Reagan. Reagan, he's the one who did the amnesty in California, and California has never been red ever since. Once that happened, and then you had the influx of immigrants, and you had all these other kinds of things, and then the outgoing of Republicans to other states, and then Californians in general fleeing California to destroy other states. I see you, Colorado and Arizona. That's what happens. And so now we are facing protests starting to spring up. New York, Austin, they were happening last night, although Austin declared their gathering pretty much illegal. Even Austin was like, yeah, no, we're not going to deal with this. And they started, shooting tear gas into it and so forth. Governor Greg Abbott will not stand for this, Brian. I'm telling you, Brian, Governor Greg Abbott said he will not stand for having these protests in Austin. So we'll see what happens in that regard with it. So it's going to be interesting how they take care of it here. New York is probably going to let half of that city burn. We'll see about Chicago this weekend. Speaking of all of them, our guest from Twitch. Yeah, a lot of people did get out of cities. They followed that 2020 logic and they got out of cities. Unfortunately, there's still people there and business is still conducted. But it brings us to this next question that we have. First of all, who is funding these protests? Well, let's take a look.
Riots. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna gave a name. Neville Singham is the man funding these riots. Not a fringe conspiracy, a billion-dollar fact. Neville Roy Singham, former tech CEO, sold his company ThoughtWorks for nearly $800 million, then disappeared into Shanghai, where he now operates inside a Chinese communist propaganda ecosystem. He's not donating to charity. He's building a political influence machine. Tens of millions funneled through shell nonprofits like the People's Support Foundation into radical activist groups like the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Answer Coalition.
By the way, the Party for Social Liberation Union, whatever he just said, that's the group that actually was identified in Austin yesterday as leading the protest. So you have that connection right there.
Code Pink and Breakthrough News, groups tied to anti-ICE actions in LA. PSL was on the ground. They weren't random protesters. They had funding, they had infrastructure, and they had a message that mirrored Singham's pro-CCP, anti-American ideology. Meanwhile, Shirla, the respectable face of immigration advocacy, got over $34 million in taxpayer funding and worked closely with protest organizers. They're not violent, but they laid the foundation. This isn't just outrage. It's foreign influence agitation, funded by a billionaire ideologue with open ties to communist China. They're not just marching, they're maneuvering. And now we know who's bankrolling the moves. My friends, we are all anonymous, and we just pulled back the mask.
Yeah, anonymous, great, whatever. That was Anna Paulina. She actually made that statement, and then they followed up on those kinds of things. So we know that, and Mark has a very interesting thing. They do seem organized. There are videos, and I should have found it. where rioters were seen getting masks out of boxes, just getting brand new masks out of the back of a truck. And oh, here it is. Give me 2 seconds. I'll download it for you and I'll get you guys this video where local news actually found this video of it's a back of like an F-150, and they're just handing out brand new equipment to anybody that wants it. And this is a funded insurrection, if you will. It is a funded counter movement. So take a look for yourself. This is local news.
Where it just feels like something's going to happen.
Okay, you got to go away. You
waiting for it to happen.
Back.
Describe where it just feels like something's going to happen and you're waiting for it to happen.
These are things that are right off the Amazon truck. You can buy these on Amazon for like $27. All right, and there are dozens of them just on the ground.
For it to happen.
Let us clarify, because we've been showing a wide shot and from a different angle, a whole lot of officers.
Look at the amount of boxes they have, and they're just tossing them out. They're just tossing them out like Oprah giving away cars at this point.
On the other side of the federal building, almost behind you, and perhaps the visual is obstructed from your point of view, but I can tell you there.
It's always the tortas here, giving all this stuff out.
Are many LAPD cars and officers there that have staged. They are blocking that freeway overpass, so protesters can't get on that overpass like they did.
So the rest of it, they just talk about that. They're being funded, and equipment is being dropped off. This is not conspiracy theory nonsense. This is fact. They're being given equipment. They're being given protective gear. They're being ordered to do these things. And that's where it goes from a organic protest, which there's, Maxine Waters and all the Democrats are claiming, it's just random organic protests, and they have the right to do that. Yeah, sure. Under the First Amendment, you have the right to organically protest. Fine. Nobody has it. You don't have the right to organize a type of event, because it's not a protest, where masks and all kinds of other things are required in order to participate. That's not the correct way to do this. I don't know. That's a good point. When do we get there, Mark? When do we get to that point that they elevate it? Because they will. We know that the end goal here is disruption. The end goal here is a disruption of Trump's agenda, of America, of these United States, a lot of things. And they're going to continue to expand out on this, and that's going to move us into our next story of the day, which is did I have here it is, from Axios.com. Boom. What to know about the counter protests to Trump's June 14th parade. So in case you didn't know, Trump has a parade scheduled for June 14th. It's a big military parade. He was very excited about it and all these other kinds of things. And for some reason, somehow they were able to put together this No Kings group that is going to mobilize, quote unquote, on the 14th, which is next Saturday. And it is, who knows what it's supposed to be? Who knows what it's supposed to do? All we know is that, and I agree with a lot of people online, this thing is a trap. This thing is an absolute trap for people to go to. And I'm trying to find the actual website. I know you should have found it before. I get it. But still, the fact of the matter is, these things are being set up in order to trap people. And so Here it is. I should have just gone there. No Kings. Here it is. The No Kings website, right? In America, we don't do kings, even though if Barack Obama was king, they would absolutely do it. And so June 14th, they rise up to find an event near you. These are all planned events throughout these United States next Saturday. So I will post this in the chat. So if you want to take a look at it, and you can stay away if there's one near you, because I'm telling you right now, you need to stay away from this stuff. Just do not get involved in this at all. Like for me, for Fort Worth, the DFW area is going to be a big place. They got multiple events taking place up in Fort Worth. Downtown Fort Worth, that's going to be the State House. Then you have in Arlington, they have another courthouse, and then up in, where's that? Euless, man, that's a nice place. Abilene, everywhere. They're springing up all over the place. Obviously, Austin, San Antonio, Houston. I mean, they're even doing them in Fort Davis. There's like 5 people in Fort Davis, yet they're still doing it. And there's a lot of money being put in behind this. And the idea behind this is very simple. They want to make it seem like there is some kind of organic movement being put out there against Trump. And so this is a different map of this. So like New Orleans, obviously, but there's always violence in New Orleans, so it's not like it's a big deal. The Northeast is kind of funny. Let's check real quick. I want to check in my home state, my actual home state of Rhode Island. I don't know how many they can look at the Northeast. It's just like one big dot. It's like the San Francisco map that's looking for poop. It's the same thing. Rhode Island is not even that big, and they managed to fit like 7 events in here. Obviously, a couple in Providence, Wakefield. Wakefield is like a super liberal, rich town. Westerly, that's crazy. Yeah, that makes sense. Massachusetts, Swansea, Providence, 2 in Providence at the State House. Block Island. This is hysterical. How are you going to have a no Kings protest in Block Island? It's it's summertime, so that makes sense. But it's kind of funny how they're trying to make this out to be something bigger than it might or might not be. But check it out in the chat, or just go to nokings.org, and you can find where the protest is near you. I mean, Florida, obviously they're trying to do a lot in Florida. Up here in the blue wall that Trump won. New York, obviously, the Northeast, and so forth. Of course, it's obviously, it makes sense based on population as well. But so this whole thing, Memphis, even Memphis. Let's see, good old Memphis. Where is it? Where are you? Memphis, Tennessee. Well, actually, it doesn't look like Memphis has one, because Memphis. Oh no, nope. Memphis does. Yep. And then there's actually in West Memphis in Arkansas, and that's the only Memphis I would ever stop in. West Memphis and in Memphis they have them. And of course Little Rock and all these other kinds of places, they're going to have them out. No, I don't think there's any state that is spared from this. Yeah, even like Wyoming, which does not have a huge population. They managed to have. I think this is more show than go, to be completely honest right now. These are quote unquote planned events. We'll see how many actually show up to them. Anyway, so protesters are quote unquote protesters, we'll say it that way, are taking to the streets and community hubs nationwide on Saturday in what organizers expect to be the largest single-day anti-Trump rally since the start of his second administration, which he's still polling ridiculously well. So the sentiment against him will not be as high as it was in 2020. Plus, they don't have the advantage of lockdowns where people were just stir crazy and wanted to just do anything just to get out of the house. So I don't know if this is going to be as big as they think. Widespread movement will run counter to Trump's multi-million-dollar parade in DC. Paid organizers wrote, "No Kings is a nationwide day of defiance, from city blocks to small towns. courthouse steps to community parks. We're taking action to reject authoritarianism. Well, their version of authoritarianism, right? They want their authoritarianism. They just don't want your authoritarianism. Just remember that. Donald Trump wants tanks in the streets and made-for-TV display of dominance for his birthday. The spectacle meant to look like strength, but real power is staged in Washington. Blah blah blah. All these stupid talking points. I can't even read it. So it's just really kind of dumb. But this is something that is happening from a security standpoint. Hey, Lou, sometimes I'm just crazy enough to be right. Sometimes I'm just crazy enough to be right. But the idea is they weren't gonna take this line down. So I think you should go to nokings.org just to look up these sites to see if there are any near you. And if there are any near you, I would beg you, don't show up, Mark. Stay away, bud. Stay away. It's a trap. It's a trap. General Akbar. I got to get General Akbar in here. It's a trap. Stay away. Do not get involved in this. Let them not show up. Because first of all, what they're doing is they are looking to antagonize people. They are looking to antagonizing. They are looking for people to get into fights with them or counter protests. They are looking for those moments that they can put up online. Don't give it to them. Do not. Stay away. It's one day. Stay home. Stay with your families. Hang out. Don't worry about it. This is a lot of show. This is a lot of momentum. But in the end, I honestly don't think most of these will be like they supposedly have one in Block Island. Nobody in Block Island is going to go to this. Block Island does have a bunch of older white women, older liberal white women. They may go to it, but that's about it. It's not going to be this mass movement that people think is going to actually happen. So do me a huge favor. Stay away from this thing and let it just come and go. Let it just come and let it go, because it's going to be 3 or 4 people per, like, outside of the big cities, Austin, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, all of the ones here in Texas, El Paso. They'll all have enough people because they have numbers in those places. Memphis, Providence, Rhode Island, even all of the big cities will have numbers. These smaller ones, they'll be absolute duds. So just let them be duds. Let law enforcement deal with it on this whole thing. This whole thing is designed to get people agitated. That's what they want. They want people agitated. They're trying to stir up emotions. They're trying to make it look like authoritarianism. So you have to be better than it, and you have to avoid it at all costs. Please, I am begging you, stay away from these things. Just stay away. Put on a movie. Have a Coke and a smile. Just relax. Right? Take a nap. It's 1,000 degrees here in Texas. It's too hot to protest. So just take it easy, my friends. Please don't be foolish enough to fall for this. It's a trap. It's an absolute trap. Don't fall for it. All right, this is RickCast. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. Let me once again remind you, if you have the ability to, please help my buddy Dean, my good friend, my brother Dean, who needs our help. He's going back in for surgery. He's on a fixed income. He can't really afford a lot of the extra things. He's having trouble raising the money for some of the extra things that his insurance won't cover. And if we can help him, we need to. So please, I will drop the link in the chat. I need to put him on the actual website, or on the actual description boxes. But if you can help him, please help him, please, because he can use our help. So if you can do it, help out our brother Dean. He can absolutely, he needs our help. And if he can't do it, I understand money is tight right now. Everybody is feeling the effects of it. My Catholic brothers and sisters, raise him, do the best you can with, and pray for him as well. All right, let's get to our next story of the night here on RickCast. Going around the horn. I should actually take the name Around the Horn now that show's gone. Anyway, we're going around the horn. Let's talk about a couple more things here from groundnews.com. This is just another example of why Republicans always lose. Federal minimum wage bill would raise the actual minimum wage to $15 an hour under Senator Hawley bill. Why, in the midst of all of these things that are going on, does Senator Josh Hawley think that we need to take time out of what's going on here to raise the minimum wage? Why do we need to raise the minimum wage? Minimum wage is not supposed to be something you live on. Minimum wage is for minimum wage jobs. Believe me, I've had my share of them. And as a firearms instructor, sometimes I'm working for less than minimum wage. If, one person comes in and I have to do an LTC course for them, I'm actually making right around minimum wage. But you know what? That's what we decide to do. And the fact of the matter is here, why are we wasting time to do it? Why are we incentivizing minimum wage jobs? Anyway, on June 10th today, Senator Josh Hawley and Pete Welch jointly proposed a bill to increase the nationwide baseline range to $15 an hour beginning January 1st, 2026. The bill responds to decade-long wage stagnation and Missouri voters approving a state minimum wage increase to $15 an hour in 2026 with some legislative inflation adjustments. Then that's fine. If Missouri voted for that, then let Missouri deal with it. Why do I have to deal with it? Why do we have to deal with increasing it? All that's going to do is, push inflation higher. Oh, well, it's good. The wages are stagnant and inflation. Yeah, this is not going to help. Legislation is part of an aspirational pro-worker framework, which includes stronger union protections and a credit card interest rate cap at 10%. I hate all of this. I hate all of it. I actually hate all of these things. So Hawley stated that this was a cross-party bill aiming to raise wage for employees throughout the country, while Welch highlighted that families nationwide are facing difficulties affording basic necessities. They're having trouble with basic necessities because you guys are printing money if the world's going to end tomorrow. If you guys stop printing money to give to like Israel and to Ukraine and to all these other places, if you stop spending money we didn't have, inflation wouldn't be as bad. I know. If we stop the idea of quantitative easing and all these other kinds of things, it wouldn't be so bad. Wages could actually keep up with that kind of stuff, but they can't keep up with that kind of stuff because we're printing money. Insert your own catchphrase here. Like there is no tomorrow. Now, the bill faces opposition from conservatives, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and President Trump, making its Senate approval uncertain despite Hawley's rare GOP support for the increase. This is just a stupid bill. I don't know why he's trying to tie this. I don't know if more unions are a good thing. I don't know. I know unions, when they were set up, they had a positive function. My only problem with unions, Mark, and I think you have a union job, and that's great. I'm not saying this to you particularly. I don't like union bosses. I don't like union bosses because union bosses don't do anything. They take your money and then they give it to Democratic causes, right? More money for that. The federal increase goes in. That money really goes into the coffers of the Democratic Party, if you think about it. If the minimum wage is increased, the money, there'll be more money taxed out of the union. Union will take that money and give it back to the Democratic Party. So, yeah, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I don't want to. That's one of the 4 cardinal sins that cries out to heaven for vengeance. If you're a Catholic, you can't deprive people of a living wage. So by that standard, everybody in Congress is violating that cardinal rule because of the amount of money we're spending in inflation. We're depriving all Americans, everybody in this union, of a living wage because they're spending so much money. They're driving inflation through the roof. And then you have things like Medicare, Medicaid, social, all these other things that have to be spent money on. that it's hard, it's almost impossible to get a living wage. I'm not debating the fact that people should have one. It's literally in Catholic teaching that people deserve to have a wage that they could support a family on. In fact, we should have a wage that one person should be able to afford to be able to take care of the rest of their family with. One person should be able to do it. But this is not the way. I don't believe this is the way. I think this is a foolish bill. And I guess he's getting heat from his own delegation. The state of Missouri did what the state of Missouri wanted to do. That's great. I'm not going to argue with it. Let them do it. They could raise it to $100 an hour. It'd be stupid, but they could do it. That doesn't mean you tack it on to the feds. And so forth. It is what it is in that regard. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to our last story of the day here on RickCast. A little bit of entertainment news for you all from bleedingfool.com. Blockbusters and boardrooms. Warner Brothers Discovery splits into two categories. Now, this is all set up to sell off assets from Warner Brothers, which was the original reason why Discovery bought Warner Brothers, I think 3 years ago. 2 or 3 years ago. We'll find out in the article. But the fact of the matter is, this is all set up. A major change that Bleeding Fool reported last year is now official, as Warner Brothers Discovery has announced they are splitting into two separate companies. Deadline is reporting that the move, led by CEO David Zaslav, comes after the company already reorganized its business into two groups: streaming and studios. And streaming and studios, and then a global network. So streaming and studios is like the actual Warner Brothers. And then all the global networks are like CNN and Discovery and all these other things nobody watches. Although people watch Discovery, I get that. Now, reorganization is becoming full split, similar to what Comcast is doing with NBC Universal's cable network. David Zaslav is going to lead the streaming and studio side, which is going to be the Warner Brothers movie division, essentially. And then Gunnar Weldon, the current CFO, will become the president and CEO of the global networks. Both men will keep their current jobs at WB until the split is finished, which is expected sometime mid-2026. Zaslav has said the cultural significance of the great company and the impact of the stories, yada, yada, yada. I don't do public speaking. It's fine. So the streaming and studios, like I said, Warner Television, Warner Brothers Motion Picture, DC Studios, HBO Max, all the stuff that actually kind of makes money for WB, right? At least used to or could potentially make money. The global networks will have the entertainment and sports, CNN, TNT, Discovery, leading European channels, which I guess if you wanted to watch soccer, and Discovery Plus. Really, Discovery Plus is the biggest brand in that global networks. It is the biggest brand of that global networks. That's the one that people actually sign up to watch. So it's going to be interesting. That is the top part. Like Warner Brothers in the movie division is the big one. Discovery Plus is the crown jewel in the global networks brand. So more people are streaming shows and movies, while traditional TV is losing viewers quicker than expected. More people are cord cutting and so forth. And this has made investors nervous and will hurt stock prices. Companies like Comcast and Lionsgate are also splitting their business to keep up and stay competitive. Because the fact of the matter is, they all destroyed their business models with streaming. There's been Midnight's Edge and other channels have talked about the fact that you used to have 5 different income streams with films. You had the film, you had merchandise, you had DVD release, which is a physical media release, and then you had selling it to like TNT and these other ones for rebroadcasting. That's why Shawshank Redemption is actually known. Shawshank Redemption actually bombed at the box office. And the only reason people actually regard it as one of the best films ever is because Turner Broadcasting bought it and just played it on a loop. So they got their money's worth out of it. So that was your 5 different income streams you used to be able to get from it. With cable no longer is one. Physical media is no longer one. Streaming is an absolute joke when it comes to pennies on a stream versus dollars on a physical media product. And then films are not making the kind of money that they need to make. We talked about it. Ballerina, they thought Ballerina was going to make somewhere between 32 to 35 million. It came in at 25. The only film that's going to make money this summer is Lilo and Stitch and Jurassic World. Those are the only movies that are going to make break a billion. Everybody else is going to be really considered financial losses. I don't know if you want to throw the Minecraft movie in there, you can, but I don't count it because it's a bunch of nerds. Go outside, nerd. Go outside. No offense to Minecraft players. I hope you enjoyed your film. I haven't even seen it, so I can't comment. But the whole landscape is changing in that regard. So the idea is that cable network groups, which still make somewhat, Bleeding Fools has a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, nowhere close to what they used to make. But I'm sure there's still older populations still use cable. And there are parts of the country where you can't get internet, so you can't stream, so you have to use cable. Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, up in that part, even parts of rural Texas, where you don't, unless you have Starlink, you can't really get high-speed internet, so you can't stream all of these channels, so you just get cable. So cable is still a viable product for much of the western half of these United States, because the eastern portion, it's pretty well connected up and down the eastern seaboard. But outside in the western part of these United States, cable still does make money. It still does. But if you start to bundle these things together, you can sell them or merge them and try to make something profitable out of a shrinking market. And that's what WB is trying to do. The whole point of this thing, the split, is to set up WB to be sold, either the movies or the global division. That's why Discovery bought Warner Brothers when it was on the chopping block a couple years ago. They were going to try and flip it like a house. They were going to cut the fat. That's what Zaslav was brought in to do. Cut the fat, make the thing profitable so they can spin it up and most likely sell it to Universal. That was the rumor, that Zaslav wanted to sell it to his buddies at Universal, the movie division, because Universal already has DC-themed parks or rides in their parks and things like that. It would have made a nice transition. So this idea that they would do that makes some sense. So the WB splits the two companies, will help them move faster and focus on what they do best. It's not as much stovepiping, if you will. Kind of the idea is, when they're all under this umbrella, they're all fighting for attention. You split them into two companies, there'll be, one person, less people to fight amongst in order to get things greenlit or just approved. Allow each company to have its own management team. That pretty much goes hand in hand with one. Make it easier for each company to attract investors, because maybe you like Warner Brothers movies, but you think CNN is an absolute rock. So you're not going to invest in Warner Brothers overall because you think CNN is just a lost object. Now you have the streaming and studios. Okay, well, I like Warner Brothers. I like the DC studios. I like what James Gunn's doing. HBO Max. I'll invest in that and stay as far away from CNN as I can at this point. WB also said the split should be tax-free for U.S. federal income purposes. That split after new companies will work together on certain services, yada, yada, yada. And it just shows that at least Warner Brothers, unlike Disney and other companies, is trying to stay ahead, or at least at this within striking distance with how quickly the media landscape is changing, because Universal is not, Disney is not, nobody else is reacting. Everybody's reacting to all of these things. And that's why the studios are just getting absolutely blindsided, and they just can't keep up with AI developments, the change in audiences, movie preferences, and so forth. So we'll see if this actually works for them, because nobody else is taking the steps that Warner Brothers is attempting to take now. All right, that's it for this episode of RickCast. Ladies and gentlemen, do me a favor, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. If you are on Instagram, why don't you hit that little heart button? Hit that little heart button. Do me a favor. Like it. We'll keep streaming on Instagram everywhere. Anyway, Bar Rats always bring it on YouTube. Thank you guys for contributing. Rumble, you guys, you need to start talking more. I see you. You're over there. Getter, you guys are always bringing it. I appreciate you guys so much over there. You guys are doing a great job on Getter. Continue to subscribe and share that program out. Kick, some people were mentioning Kick early on. Kick has been kind of quiet lately. You guys can get back into it. Twitch, you guys got into it tonight. Continue to do so. My one subscriber on Twitch, you keep doing your thing. All right, folks, that's it for this episode. I will talk to you all tomorrow. That'll be Wednesday, the 11th of June, 2025. It'll be episode 126 of RickCast. God bless, and until that day comes, y'all know what it is. Free Dexter Taylor.